You are now watching Surveillance. Donate or subscribe for more sick twists.
Hey, how's it going, guys? So this is going to be a little bit of a follow-up to my previous Shadowmourne infusion guide. This is just going to be me showing you my infusions. We're going to show you all three of them from my point of view. I did them on Monday. They're all on normal, so they're not heroic, but they're all easily doable on heroic. And I will explain to you guys, like, if you are on heroic, things you might want to watch out for. This video is also going to have some extra information that wasn't in the Shadowmourne Infusions guide, some extra tips and tricks and nuance to these infusions and how to do them properly. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And once again, thank you to all my patrons who support the channel. So our first infusion is the Unholy Infusion on Professor Putricide. Once again, did this on normal. So obviously this involves getting into the Abomination and controlling it for most of the fight. I use my Nitro Boost to get into the Abomination quickly, and I'm going to start hitting the boss with number 3, which does a lot of damage and applies Asunder. Then I'm going to drink the slime as best I can, but you can also hit the boss with number 3 at the same time because they are on separate globals. You really want to make sure that you get to 45 energy as fast as you can. This is the amount of energy that you need to use your number 2 ability, which is a slow that you are going to apply to the slimes. It has a 50-yard range. All you need to do is face the ooze and be in range, and then you can use it. So right here we get a green ooze, and you're going to hit number 2, spend all your energy, and slow it. Then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go over to the green ooze and hit it with your number 3 ability, doing a lot of damage and applying Sunder. I was a little bit late getting to this first one, but I should have went earlier. Once the ooze is dead and your raid is safe, your primary objective is to go drink more slime. As you can see here, the ooze did not die fast enough, so it exploded on the raid, but it was fine, and we were able to heal through it. Since Professor hit 80% health, he is going to transition and stun everybody with the Vile Gas. One of the things you can do here to min-max DPS a little bit is to try to ask your tank, when they're on the same side of the room as the slime puddle, to tank the boss near the slime puddle so you can drink slime while you hit the boss with your number 3 ability, because you can do them both simultaneously. And your number 3 ability does not cost energy, so do not worry about that. So I'm just going to drink as much slime as I can, clearing up all the slime puddles in the room, getting my energy as high as possible for the next ooze. And here we go, we're about to get our next ooze. And one of the things you can do here to get energy faster as the Abomination is to have a Resto Druid with Revitalize, put a Rejuvenation on you, or to have a Priest with the Rapture talent, put a Power Word Shield on you, and that can help you generate energy a little bit faster. Now this is where my raid planned to do the infusion, but I ended up just 3 energy shy of being able to cast it because it requires 100 energy. Because I was saving my energy for the infusion, I did not have energy to slow the ooze. So instead of hitting the boss, I should have been hitting the ooze with my number 3. Now it seems pretty hard to do your infusion and slow every single ooze. It looks like most of the time you're always going to have one ooze that you can't slow because you are saving energy for the infusion, or you just cast the infusion. So here I go casting the infusion. It's a 4-second cast, and it gives me a buff, a 6-minute buff with the Shadow's Edge icon, as you can see up there in the buffs. So casting the infusion will take up all your energy, and your next goal is to just drink as fast as you can to try to slow the next ooze. And I wasn't able to slow the ooze as fast as I would have liked to, but I did manage to get it off right here. And once again, I should have been using my number 3 ability on the ooze instead of running straight to the boss. That's just one of the mistakes that I just kept making throughout the fight, is I was not hitting the oozes as much as I should have been as the Abomination. Now the green oozes stun the person that they're on, and the red oozes you can kind of kite a little bit, but they seem a bit more dangerous when they actually hit you. So the best time to infuse is always going to be right after you slow an ooze. It could be red or green depending on how your raid feels about it, but you typically want to slow an ooze, then drink to full and infuse. If you don't have 45 energy and there is slime puddles on the ground, you should probably prioritize drinking the slime puddles over hitting the ooze with your number 3. This is just to make sure that you will have enough energy to slow the next ooze that comes after. As long as this ooze is slowed, your raid should be able to do enough damage to kill it before it reaches its target, and that'll allow you to go drink the slime puddles to get more energy for the next one. Now, on heroic, when the boss gets to 80%, he's going to spawn 2 oozes at the same time. So you want to get as much energy as possible before that transition so that when the 2 oozes come out at the same time, you can handle them. And I would highly recommend not doing your infusion until after those oozes are handled. So that's pretty much all there is to it until you get the boss to about 30%. When he'll transition into phase 3, you just want to keep hitting the oozes, drinking the slime puddles, and slowing the oozes as best you can to prevent them from hitting the raid. And we still seem to struggle here to kill the ooze before they get to the raid, and we end up having a few deaths because of it. If you're on heroic and the green ooze hits the raid, you might easily wipe because of it. So now we get a red ooze. I'm going to slow it, and I'm going to go hit it with my number 3. And in the process, I walk over a slime puddle, and then I'm able to drink the slime puddle while hitting the red ooze. Anytime you're able to multitask like this by hitting something with your 3 while drinking the puddle at the same time, it's really, really good. Here we get our phase 3 transition at around 35%. What he's going to do now is he's going to kick me out of the Abomination, and he's going to transform, and then I get to go back to my regular Ret Paladin self, and the goal here is to just stay alive till the end of the fight and deal damage. So we can just fast forward through this part. The most important part here is to just stay alive. You don't want to lose your Shadowmourne Infusion buff. That's like the worst thing that could happen here, because as long as you kill the boss, you're totally done. So just stay out of the volatile gas, the little orange clouds, and try to stay out of any of the slime puddles as they gradually fill the room. If your nitro boots are back up, use them as you need just to avoid slime. Now, on the other infusions, you cannot bubble, and we'll talk about why when we get to those infusions. On this fight, I'm not 100% sure if bubbling will actually cause any issues, because as far as I can tell, it's just a buff, not a debuff. So I'm not sure if you can bubble here, although I personally wouldn't risk it. It might be safe to do, I'm not sure. Also, if you have DSAC, you might as well use it here, because the fight is pretty much over, and you might as well go DSAC spec for this anyway, just so that you have a DSAC for phase 3, if you have it, as your dual talent. Now we've completed Unholy Infusion, we're going to go back to the start of the instance and turn it in, and then we're going to go to Blood Queen Lanethel for our next one. So now we have our Blood Infusion on Blood Queen Lanethel. The whole goal here is to get the Blood Mirror debuff, which you're going to get by standing on top of the tank right on the pole. You're going to get the debuff, and then you're going to immediately move out and let the off tank move in so that he can get the debuff. You only need to get it for just a second, and then your goal is to get second on threat, so you can get the bite if you're going to be the first bite. Otherwise, you just go back to doing normal DPS, and then when you finally get bitten, which is going to be either the first or the second bite, because otherwise you're not going to be able to do the infusion. After you get the bite, all you need to do is bite 3 more people, and then your infusion is done. Now, every time you bite somebody, you're going to get a debuff. It's going to stack up, and it's going to do more damage to you every second, and it's going to reduce your damage by 10%. Once you do your 3rd bite, it's going to disappear, and your infusion is complete. Then you just need to not die and kill the boss. It seems pretty simple, right? Well, if you're going to be the first bite, there's a little bit of an issue with Blood Mirror. So here I get Blood Mirror by standing on the tank, and then I immediately move out. I have Righteous Fury up so that I can climb on threat. Now be very careful with Righteous Fury if you're playing a Paladin, because then you can very easily rip aggro. If you're a Warrior, I think you have Defensive Stance. If you're a DK, you have Frost Presence. Different ways to generate more threat, so you can get number 2. You can always also have your raid slow on the damage. So here, I did not get the first bite, which is fine. As long as you get the second bite, you can still make it work. And the reason I didn't get the first bite is, well, we're not 100% sure, honestly. It just seems like there is this specific issue when you're doing the infusion with the Blood Mirror. So let me explain. The Blood Mirror debuff that you get at the very beginning from the tank, it kind of signifies you as a tank to the boss, right? And that makes you not a valid target for the bite. So anytime you have the debuff Blood Mirror, you cannot be bitten. By the boss, that is. You can still be bitten by players, but you cannot be bitten by the boss. So we were wondering, like, is it because she's snapshotting her target? Is she deciding to bite, like, 10 seconds before she actually does it, while you have the Blood Mirror debuff, and that's why we can't get it? But we think we found the solution, because sometimes, I would get the bite first, and other times I wouldn't. We went through all my logs and all my videos, and we think we figured it out. So it seems that if you get the Blood Mirror debuff at the very beginning, and you're second on threat, and you stay second on threat the whole way to the bite, it seems like you just won't get the bite. And now, if you move on the threat table and you change positions after the Blood Mirror debuff falls, it seems like it kind of like updates you as a DPS to the boss so that she knows that you're a valid target. So anytime I was second on threat, the whole pull all the way to the bite, I would not get the bite. Even when I was way above everybody else on threat, I made sure that my mages did not use mirror images because mirror images will cause issues. A lot of times when a mage uses mirror images, they will get the bite. So make sure if you're trying to get the first bite to have your mages not do mirror images. But anytime I had somebody pass me on threat briefly, even for just a second, if my threat position changed from 2 to 3, and then I go back up to 2, and I get the bite, then it would work, right? So to get around this, you kind of don't want to be second on threat the whole way through the pull all the way to the bite. You either want to, there's 2 ways around this as far as I can tell. The first is to not generate threat until after the Blood Mirror debuff falls. And if you have something like Righteous Fury that you can generate threat really, really fast, that should be really easy to do. As soon as the Blood Mirror debuff is gone, you should still be able to climb up to second threat really fast. You can also have the raid slow their DPS to ensure that you get the bite. Now, making the raid slow DPS could hurt you if you're on heroic and you're fighting against the enrage, but it shouldn't be that bad because most of the damage on this fight comes later on when more people are bitten and not at the very beginning when nobody has the bite. So it shouldn't be too bad in terms of hurting your overall damage and kill time. Now, if you're on heroic and you're right up against the enrage, you probably don't want to be the first bite target anyway because it's probably better off going to like a feral or a fire mage or something to do more damage. Because, you know, obviously right now, fire, feral, they're going to do more damage than you are with the bite, especially because like fire mage, they can shoot the boss while she's in the air. So if you're right up against the enrage, you probably want to be the second bite anyway and not the first bite. Once again, this is really only a concern for heroic. The other way around this, I think this would work, is to have your tank number 1 and your off tank number 2 and to be third on threat. Because I think that if your tank and your off tank are 1 and 2, then I think you should still be able to get the bite as number 3. Because she always goes to the highest non-tank threat target, right? So if your off tank and your tank are both counted for already, and the game has already updated you as like a DPS by changing the threat position, then I think that should work. I haven't tested this myself, but this is just kind of like our theory, is that if you have both tanks above you, 1, 2, and then you're number 3, that also might work. But I think it's a little bit easier to just don't climb on threat until after the Blood Mirror falls off, right? It should still be easy to get second on threat, especially if you have people slow their damage. And that's really the hardest part of the fight, is just, you know, making sure you get your bite and staying alive the whole time. This is a really, really easy infusion, okay? So we did this on normal, and I got the second bite. I did not get the first bite due to the issue I already talked about. I got the second bite. So this is on normal, and I have to get 3 bites before I get my infusion. So earlier in the pool, when I had 2 bites, the boss was getting pretty low, and I still only had 2 bites. So I actually had to call out to my raid to slow their DPS, just to make sure that the boss survived long enough for me to get my 3rd bite. If you're on normal, you might have to do this, just to make sure that 5th bite, or the 3rd bite for you, actually happens. That's being the second bite target. If you're the first bite target, it's probably fine, and you probably won't need to slow DPS. On heroic, you probably will get 5 bites anyway, unless you just have like the most insane raid DPS I've ever seen in my life. So that should not be an issue. If you're first or second, it shouldn't really be a problem. You probably will not have to slow DPS. Now, the only real issue with doing this on heroic is if you're the first bite, you may not be the highest DPS target for the first bite, right? Maybe your raid could do more damage if it was like a fire mage who got the first bite, because they can still hit her while she's in the air. So that's the kind of thing that you might have to work around if you're on heroic and, you know, you plan on doing your infusion. You can always do the second bite if you're on heroic, and it should not ever be an issue. So just think about that, plan around that. If you're on normal, you can always slow the DPS, whatever. So once you get your 3rd bite done, your debuff is going to go away, and you're going to be done with your infusion. All you need to do now is survive until the end of the fight, and make sure that you don't die or wipe. Now, one of the important things that you need to remember here is to not ever bubble. If you're a paladin, you cannot bubble at any point of this fight, or you will lose the debuffs that you need for your infusion, and this is going to go for Syndragosa too, as we're going to see a little bit later. If you bubble, you will not infuse, and I've actually already seen a Ret Paladin who accidentally bubbled and did not complete his infusion because he bubbled off the Gushing Wounds debuff that you're supposed to be trying to stack to 3 or 4 or however. Yeah, I guess it's 4 because you get 1 from the blood mirror and then 3 from the bites. So you're trying to stack it to 4 to complete your infusion. If you get a swarming shadows on you or something and you just don't even think about it and bubble, you're going to lose the infusion. You're not going to complete it. So I would honestly just take it off your bars completely. That's why I have like an empty space on my action bars, because I just totally took it off my bars. I didn't even want to risk it, right? So just take it off your bars if you're playing a paladin. Do not immune yourself and you'll be fine. Now, the best way to order the bites, you typically want to have melee biting melee so they don't have to move, and ranged biting ranged. And you're going to want to typically have the bitee move to the biter, because the biter is doing a lot more damage and you want to maximize damage, especially if you're on heroic. So you always have the person who's getting bitten try to move to the person who's biting. If you're melee, it's really easy. But ranged, they're going to want to bite ranged. Obviously, this is a Shadowmourne video, so all you guys are going to be melee. So try to get your guilds to have you biting melee. Also, the first bite, if you're the first bite target and you're going to be biting the second bite target, a lot of guilds like to delay it to the last second possible. So once you turn into, the vampire, you have 10, 15 seconds to bite somebody. And a lot of guilds like to delay it to the last second so that the bites don't line up with air phase as much, because during air phase it's kind of dangerous to be standing together because you'll take more damage from the blood bolt whirl. That's really only something you need to think about if you're the first bite target. If you're the second bite target, you can probably just bite people right away, as long as they're near you. If you don't bite somebody in time, you will become mind controlled. And obviously, if that happens, your raid is going to need to kill you and you're not going to complete your infusion. So make sure you know ahead of time where your bite target is at and make sure you get there on time. So that's pretty much all I think I wanted to say about the blood infusion. Just to recap, if you are getting the first bite, make sure that you are not second on threat the whole way from the start of the fight to the bite. Because if you are second on threat while you have the blood mirror debuff and stay second on threat the whole way to the bite, you probably just won't get it. That's our current working theory on how this works. Otherwise, you want to be the highest threat, and just make sure that you don't pull aggro off the main tank, because that will screw everything up. Then all you need to do is get 3 more bites before the boss dies. If you're on normal, you can slow the DPS to make sure that this third bite happens, especially if you're the second bite target. You probably will need to. And just survive, don't bubble, and make sure that you stay alive so that you don't lose your infusion. And now we will move on to Syndragosa for the Frost infusion. Now, I found this one to be the easiest on normal. On heroic, it might be a little bit more challenging, but I think overall it's still pretty easy if you have a good frost resistance set. Now, I have my frost resistance set on, the same set that I used for tanking 10-man Syndragosa, and I made a colossal mistake here. I actually forgot to put my taunt glyph on, so I taunt the boss twice by accident. This is actually such a colossal screw up. I'm not even sure how he didn't wipe, but luckily I realized what happened pretty much as soon as I could, and luckily my main tank was very, very quick to taunt the boss back off of me, and I found out that I did not have the taunt glyph on, so I basically couldn't do anything this whole fight. I couldn't use any of my DPS spells because all of them had taunt macroed into them for damage. So that is already a colossal screw up. You're already kind of dead weight on this fight when you're doing the infusion, but I was even more dead weight because I couldn't even do mediocre damage, right? So this whole infusion is just about getting 4 frost breaths, taking 4 frost breaths in a row while you have Shadow's Edge equipped, right? So here I'm actually frantically trying to pull out my spells from the spellbook just so that I can use them without taunting the boss. But even after doing that, I was too nervous to use any of them just in case I missed one of them. So I just still did not do any damage. I just tried to do mediocre healing where I could and eat the frost breaths as I needed to. Now, a lot of people ask me if there's a way to do this infusion without being dead weight. And I think really all you can do when you do this infusion is mediocre DPS or mediocre healing. I don't think you can take Shadow's Edge off. I'm not 100% sure on that for any of these infusions, if you can take Shadow's Edge off after you get the buff. But I honestly wouldn't risk it. And I don't know anybody who would be willing to risk it just so we can test it. So because of that, I'm not really sure if you can off-tank Phase 3. Because, the off-tank usually only tanks in Phase 3. So that could be a possible option while you're doing your infusion, while you're in tank gear, if you were able to take Shadow's Edge off. But since we don't know if you can actually do that or not, I'm not going to recommend you guys to do that, just because the possibility of you screwing up your infusion, it's not something you want to risk. So I'm not really sure if you can off tank to not be dead weight here. I think all you really might be able to do is mediocre damage, mediocre healing. So you're going to do this fight like normal. You probably don't want to eat your frost breaths until later in the fight, because you're gonna get a debuff that's gonna make you tick like damage per second, and it's just easier for you to get the frost breaths later in the fight. So here the boss is like 57%, and I move in front of the boss. I'm being very careful not to be too close, because if you're too close, you can get cleaved and you'll just instantly die. Unless you're wearing like really good tank gear, but you don't have a shield on, so you probably still might just die. I wasn't taking a whole lot of damage from the frost breaths. I had, once again, my frost resist gear on, and let's go over that real quick. So these are the recommended items for your frost resist set. The cloak enchant, the helm enchant, and then you have the helm and the ring from Onyxia. I didn't have those. I just had another tier 9 helm with a frost enchant on it. So if you're on normal, should be able to get by without the Onyxia items, but they're good to have. And then you have the 3 BOE items at the bottom, the boots, the belt, and the ring, which you can gem with stamina. Now you're also going to want to make sure you have a frost resistance aura, and you're also going to want to make sure you have a lesser flask of resistance. That'll give you an extra 50 frost resist. So overall, I had 465 frost resistance, and that's fully raid buffed. And this is the damage that I took from the breaths. I full resisted one, and then the other ones I mitigated over half. Took about 15 to 17k damage. And I think the fourth one wasn't showing up on the logs here, but I think it was a full resist. So I think I full resisted 2, and then the other 2 I mitigated like 55%. This was enough to survive even without raid cooldowns, but you can always also use AM Frost or Mastery Frost, and you can always also use DSAC if you need to help survive the breaths. So on Heroic, I would probably make sure that you use a raid cooldown for every breath that you're going to take, and I would probably also make sure to wear extra frost resist. You can always get by with, like, if you need an extra frost resist and you don't have, maybe like the Onyxia items or something, you can always use like a green item of frost resistance. Like, sure, it's not pretty, but it'll work. You're not going to be getting hit by the boss like melee attacks, so you don't need to be like tanky or anything. You just need to have high frost resist and some good stamina. And once you've gotten your 4 breaths and you have your infusion buff, you just need to stay alive and not wipe. Make sure that you go behind the tombs and clear your stacks every time you need to, and just do the fight as normal. Now, I recommend getting at least 1 or 2 breaths before phase 3 begins, just to make sure you get all 4 before the boss dies. Just because, some people, if they're doing on normal especially, a lot of people only get 4 breaths or so in the last phase. So if you miss one, you might not be able to infuse. On Heroic, you might get more. I'm not sure, I haven't done it yet. But I would just aim to get 1 or 2 of your breaths done before phase 3 at least. Now, when you finish your infusion, you are going to start taking ticking frost damage. And I think if you bubble at any point in this fight, you will also screw up the infusion. So once again, take bubble off your bars. You don't need it, okay? Don't even try, because the frost breath debuff is going to stack up on you, and you need that. So once again, just don't bubble. Just stay alive at this point, and you will complete your infusion in no time. Now, if you haven't started doing Heroic Syndragosa progress yet, I would definitely recommend to try to get your Frost Infusion done before you start doing Heroic Syndragosa attempts, just because it's going to be a lot easier and a lot safer. So once again, that's pretty much it. I found this one really easy on normal. Just make sure that you stand far enough in front of the boss that you don't get cleaved. You'll get hit by the breath no matter what. Trust me, it has an extremely, extremely large range. Just make sure you do not get cleaved. And then when you're moving in and out from like in front of the boss, you can also use like Blessing of Freedom or have a paladin in your raid give you freedom so that you can move in and out faster. You can also use various like shields and absorbs, like have your priest put a shield on you. There's an item called Glyph of Warding. You can use that. There's also like frost protection potions. You can use those. A lot of different ways to, optimize and reduce the amount of damage you're taking from the breath. So that's pretty much it, guys. I hope that giving you my point of view kind of helped a little bit. If you're a little bit nervous going into these infusions, I hope that it kind of ironed some things out for you and helped to answer some of the questions that we've been getting in the Pally Discord. And I just want to say thanks if you're still with me at this point. Thanks for watching the video. And I really hate to say this, like I really hate doing this, but if you really like the video, then maybe subscribe to the channel or leave a comment letting me know. Also, anytime I post a video, if there is any errors or corrections that need to be made, I will always leave a pinned comment at the bottom. So anytime you watch one of my videos, just double check the comments and look and see if there's a pinned comment and just read whatever's there. It might have some extra information, or if I made a mistake, it'll have any kind of corrections that need to be issued. So that's it. Thank you guys very much for watching the video. I really wish you guys good luck on your Shadowmournes, and I hope you complete the infusions with no issues. I found them really easy on normal. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you did heroic maybe and you did your infusions, let me know how hard they were for you, or maybe maybe you did them on normal. Just let me know how they went for you, or if you still have any questions, go ahead and ask them. So thanks again, guys, and have a good night.
This show was brought to you by Light Club, where monkeys go to church.